So again, there's only actually two questions on solving systems. All right, if you're that A student, if you're going for that A, you need to know all of these, right? There's two types of systems two methods to solve these systems. One is linear combinations, where you eliminate something, and if they are lined up like this, x is on top of x's, y is on top of y's, equal on top of equal, number on top of number, that's where you combine the lines to get something to cancel. Now, over here, they're not lined up. Y over x equal, it's not over the equal, so it's not lined up. So on that one, since you have a variable all by itself, y equals, on this one we're going to use substitution. So let me go through these quickly, even though I've already explained them on the other videos for the practice final. Right here, we're going to combine the lines, and we are going to end up with a negative 24x. These guys cancel, the equals comes down, and over here on the right side we have negative 192. And so we have a simple one-step equation now. We divide by negative 24, divide by negative 24, x equals positive 8. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. If you have the x value of 8 and you want the y value, all you have to do is substitute it into any equation you want. I want to go with the top one. I am going to take the 8 and plug it in right there into the x. So over here on the side, we're going to end up with negative 10 times 8 instead of times x plus 3y equals negative 107. So we really have negative 80 plus 3y equals negative 107. And then we need to get rid of that minus 80 by adding 80. So 107, or negative 107 plus 80 is negative 27. So we have 3y equals negative 27, which means that when you divide both by 3, you get y equals negative 9. So your answer is going to be written in coordinate format 8, comma, negative 9. Everybody with me? Okay. Now that's when we applied linear combinations, so we could do the elimination, right? Or elimination method. Combine the lines, it eliminates, you end up with a single variable equation. You solve it, you get one answer, x equals 8. What do? You plug it into any equation you want to find the other answer, y equals negative 9. Now, when they're not lined up, if they have a variable all by itself, that's where I recommend substitution. So on this one, we're going to use substitution because it's not lined up. It does have y equals 4x plus 14. So you're going to take that y value of 4x plus 14 and plug it into the equation you have not used, or the other equation, into the y. So that bottom equation becomes 3x minus 2 times y, but instead of y, we're plugging in that 4x plus 14 equals 52. So we simplify the equation and then solve it. Negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x. Negative 2 times 14 is negative 28. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the 52, bring down the 3x out in the front. When you combine the 3x minus 8x, you get a minus 5x. Minus 28 equals 52. Final step would be to add 28. Add 28. You're going to end up with negative 5x equals 80. When you divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5, we end up with x equals negative 16. So your final, oh no, that's barely one answer. The x value, we still need the y value. Again, once you have one answer and you need the other, just take that value and plug it into any equation you want. I'm going to go with the top equation. I'm going to plug in that negative 16 right there into that x position. So it's going to be y equals 4 times negative 16 plus 14. And of course you could use a calculator. 4 times negative 16 is negative 64. And then plus 14, that ends up being negative 40. Or 50. Negative 50. So your final coordinate answer is negative 16 for x, negative 50 for y. So there's only 2 of those on the final, solving the systems. So if you're not, let's say you don't know anything, I wouldn't worry about these till the very end, okay? First, focus in on what I've explained on previous videos, which is factoring, also graphing parabolas. All that comes out a lot more than these systems. Now, in addition to solving systems, there's a couple more smaller topics that we need to touch on before you're ready for the final, like applying square roots in equations. So right here, there's specifically 2 of these types of questions on the final exam where you have to apply a square root in an equation when solving. And when you do apply a square root, you need to remember to put a plus minus in front of your answer. So let me move this one to the side. On this one, there is only one w in the whole equation, which means that we're going to isolate that w by getting it by itself on one side. And how do we get it by itself? How do we get rid of things? You do the opposite to get rid of something. So we have a power of 2. We have a square right there. We don't want a square, so to get rid of it, we do the opposite, a square root. So we end up with w minus 9, no more square. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other side. And when you apply a square root in an equation, you must put a plus or minus right in front of your answer. So I have w minus 9 equals plus or minus 4. So I need one more step, actually a couple more steps. I need to isolate the w, so I need to get rid of the minus 9 by doing the opposite, plus 9. And what you do to one side, do to the other. Now I'm not actually going to do this, I'm just going to rewrite it. So on my left side, I have w equals, that's what I want. And on the right side, I have a positive 9 plus or minus 4. Now that's both plus or minus, so you have to do both situations. You have 9 plus 4, which is 13, and you also have 9 minus 4, which is 5. So your 2 answers are 13 and 5. So keep in mind that when you apply a square root in an equation, you have to put a plus or minus in front of the answer. Okay? If you don't do that, you're only going to get one answer, and that's incorrect. It has to be both answers. Let's move on to the other one that's on the final, or the other one that's on this practice final, at least number 20. Now on the test, it's going to say solve by factoring, but that's kind of misleading because it's easier to solve applying square roots. So if I just take a look at this equation and I say, okay, I only have one x. Let's get that x by itself by getting rid of things by doing the opposite. I could get rid of this multiplication of 9 right in front of it, Brianna, by dividing by 9. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side, divide by 9. Now 64 divided by 9, it doesn't work out so good, so I'm going to leave it like that, like a fraction. X squared equals 64 over 9. So what I want to do now is apply a square root to get rid of this square. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side, but I need to remember that when I do that, I end up with a plus minus in front of my answer. So let me write my answer so far. X equals, and I'm going to put a plus minus in front of my answer. But remember, taking the square root of a fraction, you could split that root and do the square root of 64 and the square root of 9, and that will be your answer. Square root of 64 is 8, square root of 9 is 3. So the answer is x equals plus or minus 8/3. And that's about it, guys. Those are the 2 types of questions where you could solve equations by applying a square root to get rid of a square. So on this video, all I did was explain those few questions, only 2 on solving systems, and only 2 where we apply a square root when solving.